All right, our last plenary panel, AI in higher education. It'll be moderated by Dr. Laird Burns. Hopefully his kidney stones will allow him to get through the next 50 minutes. Associate Professor, University of Alabama in Huntsville, and I'll allow him to introduce his panel to you. You're on, the doctor.
I have to say, I love Wink. He is fantastic, but he doesn't keep his secret. I'm like, Wink, you've known me for years. Just in case I hesitate a little bit, I decided a couple hours ago to enjoy some more kidney stones. So of course, he kept it a secret as only Wink can do. So thank you for that. If our panel would come up, what we'll do, we're going to have a panel in AI and higher education. One of the things that Nick and the team here at USC are very keen about is lifelong learning. And so I'm going to let our panel introduce themselves. We'll have some key themes. And we actually brought in somebody from industry as well, because in lifelong learning, it turns out, as you're learning, for example, artificial intelligence, even highly educated, engineering-oriented companies also have to learn about AI and how we're doing that internally. And so that and the fact that we had somebody from A&B this morning, we had to have an infiltrator from Intel as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to introduce the team, or I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm Dr. Laird Burns. I'm at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. We're not the school with the football team. That's our sister campus that has the football team. I'm actually a Michigan grad, among other things, in Michigan State. So welcome to USC to the Big Ten. I love you guys. I hope we beat you in football once in a while, but other than that, I'm all for USC. My PhD is actually in modeling complexity of supply chain disruptions. And so I'm excited about talking about AI in higher education because we're doing a lot of work with that. I have a side business we won't talk about in AI precision forecasting and reliability. But the point is we have panelists with different perspectives. We're living AI, and we want to share from a student perspective, from a teaching perspective, from a general expert perspective. What are our thoughts on that? So if you want to go ahead, Vishal, you want to go first and do an introduction?
Sure. Am I on? Okay, wait. Hi, so I'm Vishal Gupta. I'm an associate professor at data science and operations at USC Marshall. I have an affiliate position in industrial systems and engineering, and I'm an affiliate faculty at the Center for AI and Society, which is a long way of saying I do research on AI and optimization stuff. And let's leave it at that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Paternina. I'm originally from Colombia, South America. And I worked there for over 24 years before I came to the US. I'm an assistant professor now at the College of Business, the Management Information Systems Department in San Diego State University, very close to us right now. And a beautiful commute time this morning, only an hour and a half. So, which that doesn't happen very often. My work is similar to Vishal. I work in the development of information systems for industry using AI-driven optimization of large-scale systems.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm Subhro Mitra. I'm a professor in University of North Texas at Dallas. I don't know how many, do you have anyone from Texas here or from Dallas? Wow, great. So, well, it's great to visit Dallas, but not right now. It's over 100, so stay away from Dallas right now. But again, as far as supply chain is concerned, Dallas is a logistics hub. So we have railroad, we have interstates and trucking companies, logistics companies, name any. So we have a great inland port in Dallas, which is really developing in leaps and bounds. So probably we'll talk more about that as the panel goes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Chervich. I teach at Oakton College. Oakton is a community college just outside of the city of Chicago. We're about 5 miles from O'Hare. So logistics is definitely something that's very important to us. I teach international business and marketing. And I have a background in marketing. This teaching is my second career. So I'm happy to be on the panel.
I'm Elise Hallstrom. I'm a senior data scientist at Intel. I've been learning AI in my job, and I actually work on embedding advanced analytics within all the different business processes across the company.
Thank you. So we have a very interesting group. We have folks with industry backgrounds that are in academia, the industry. And what she didn't tell you is she's also helping to teach folks inside Intel about AI and the internal adoption, the lifelong learning piece. So we had a conversation before this to talk about it. One of the first areas we want to do is ask each one of our experts their position in whatever way they want to take it. So for example, when we talk about AI in students at the university or internally with a company, what are their perspectives? And we don't have any rules on what their favorite things to talk about, what they're passionate about. So I'm hoping we'll get some very interesting backgrounds. So Michelle, would you like to share?
I made
from
the
student
mistake.
Side, we'll get to teaching in a minute. Fact.
I made the mistake of sitting in this first chair. All right, so I guess when I think about, we're doing a couple of things in my classroom using AI, and I'll just sort of mention two that I think are really interesting and worth thinking about. So the first is using Gen AI tools to help students with no coding background to prototype small models, and these are simulation models and things like that. So the idea is that with something like ChatGPT, I can take some of my supply chain students and have them work on creating a little Python module that allows them to simulate what inventory would look like in the system, or what this series of transshipments across the Atlantic would look like. And just to give you an idea of why this is important, if you're as old as I am, when we used to teach this or when you used to learn this, you would use some clunky piece of software that was like built into Excel. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. And the real issue was that it was very brittle. So you would be able to do something that it was pre-designed to do, but then if you said, oh, actually for my business, there's like a volume discount. And if we were to do more than 100 units, we would actually get this at this cheaper price. Tough luck. Like the software doesn't support that, and so you just have to deal with it. Whereas here with these Gen AI tools, you can develop like a really high fidelity simulation that reflects the domain knowledge that my students have. And the nicest part about this is that the code that comes out of these tools is often not that far from being able to be polished, JIT compiled down, and then sent out to be used in production. So it sends them into a place where it connects them much more closely to the way these tools are used and allows them to prototype and think about them. So I think that's one exciting thing we're doing in the classroom. The other one I'll say is that I believe very strongly around responsible AI usage and some AI ethics issues. And one of the ways that we teach that is I teach my students how to jailbreak AI. So for those that haven't done this before, jailbreaking AI involves taking a tool like ChatGPT and getting it to do something it's not supposed to do. So OpenAI has put guardrails around ChatGPT so that it doesn't give you dangerous information or spew racist jokes or things like this. But if you're a little bit clever about how you use it, you can get it to do these things. And so I show my students this, and then I let them run free to see what they can do. And because they're Gen Z and terrifying, they come back and get ChatGPT to tell them how to dispose of a body without being found, how to make meth, how to make a pipe bomb. And I think the experience teaches them exactly how sort of brittle these tools are at current, and what are the sort of failure modes that we should be thinking about before deploying them in high stakes situations. And then I'll pass it on.
Very interesting, by the way. And thank you for the question. I'm going to start saying that I started this last couple of semesters to pilot the use of AI, and I'm going to break down into several issues. So everybody talks about AI as generative AI these days, but depending on the course that I teach, sometimes I do teach decision making, and then we use a lot of reinforcement learning algorithms and large scale optimization to make decisions. Truly, and most of my data sets come from my industry experience, so my consulting jobs and things like that. So when we do that, you first face a student that knows nothing about decision processes or decision-making processes, and they come scared. So the good thing about Gen AI now is that we are helping those students to kind of, pile up that conversation and leverage their capabilities and bring more to the table. So it's kind of like we are democratizing the learning process in that sense. We're helping students with basically zero knowledge in coding to code with the help of some of the tools that generative AI is giving us some hand. And it's been a wonderful experience for them. However, we need to be careful about the negative connotations of not using it responsible. You have to be careful about using, proofreading tools like Turnitin, or like to check for similarity scores in the text. You also have to tell them, you know what, you can tell the AI to give you an outline of what you want to do. It gives you a good head start. Great, by the way. Some of the main problems that we have when we're writing reports is that we don't know how to start. So if we help the students, we guide them responsibly, telling them this is how you can do it. You can ask ChatGPT, this is my topic. I want to talk about, I don't know, emissions in the port of LA. And then, okay, that's an interesting topic. What do you want to know about that? And it's an interactive process in which you can start building up that report from scratch. And it's still going to be your report. And by the way, these are the students that are going to be the future of work. So that people, these students that we're having now, they're going to be able to manage these tools once they go to the job marketplace, and we want them to use them responsibly. That's like kind of the main takeaway. You are democratizing, or we are democratizing the learning process somehow. We're helping students that somehow were stuck at the beginning of the process. And now they're going to be able to have these tools to help them once they go to industry. Supra?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about our experience. But what I'll do, I'll take probably a different route. I'll talk more holistically about whenever there is a new technology, academia takes a skeptic look at it.
Yeah.
So I don't know when calculator was first introduced in classes in US. I'm sure most faculties must have been very skeptic about it. Well, it will take away mathematical skills from students in the classrooms. I'm sure when computer was first introduced in schools and colleges, they had been skeptic. Similarly, if I talk about generative AI in 2023, when we first heard about it, we faculties talked like not loud, probably somewhere in the corner that, well, Gen AI is coming and everything is going to break loose. The academia we are having huge problem. So we thought, well, we have to let students stay away from it as long as possible. But again, we don't want our students to use that, but we are making our lessons plan using ChatGPT. So that's so ironical. But slowly we started understanding, well, we had used Turnitin and all the stuff in the syllabus, like, well, whatever assignments we give, it has to go through Turnitin, so make sure you write it yourself. But slowly we understood that everything has its own learning curve and evolution. So students need not spend time in writing, but they can do the initial draft using ChatGPT. Then they can probably do some collaborative session in class and then make a presentation. So initial legwork is probably done by somebody else, which is ChatGPT for this example, or any other Gen AI tool. So in that way, they not only save time, but increases the standard of learning. Probably as we, again, it's not yet matured yet. We are going through a learning phase, all of us, as far as generative AI and AI is concerned. But I think for AI, we all know that it helps, especially I'm in the supply chain department, it helps so much in supply chain resilience. If you are into the mathematical modeling, like the Bayesian network and all the stuff, that's so much useful in our supply chain resilience. But probably we are all learning, and it should come up more in this discussion. Yes, please.
So as I said, I work at a community college and we have an open enrollment, which means anybody who applies gets to come to Oakton. And as you can imagine, we have various different levels of skills. And what I've seen just off the bat is that using generative AI is a way, as my colleagues have said, to democratize. So the district that, the community college district that I'm in, we have one of the best high schools in the country in our district. And then we have students that are coming from inner city Chicago. And so their experience, their K through 12 experience is really different. And so getting students to use generative AI to do their outlines, to help them get started with their work, I've seen a dramatic improvement in the quality of work. I know that one of my colleagues had alluded to this, that we were talking about this earlier. There's a lot of hand wringing at my institution, and probably not unlike most institutions of higher education. And, how do you know they're not going to cheat? Well, I'm here to tell you they cheat when they're sitting in front of me, right? Like, so I feel that helping them to use this tool in a responsible way is actually cutting down on a lot. I've seen and from what I can tell, the level of cheating go down substantially since we started using generative AI. And I'm also creating, and I'll talk about this when we get things that are way more engaging. So they hold me to a higher standard because they know that I have the capability to do that. So there's a lot more engagement because of the tools that we're using in Gen AI.
So I write a lot of machine learning scripts that we end up deploying across the company. And I've been learning how to use Gen AI to help me with that process. So I often will have like a problem that I see kind of across the company, and I work on brainstorming, like, okay, what are the steps that I want to take here? And then I've been running it past the Gen AI to say like, okay, what am I missing? Do I have any holes here? Making sure that my overall algorithm looks solid, even using it to help me generate sections of code. So instead of looking at examples across the internet for hours, trying to piece them together, being able to do that much more rapidly with the code that it can generate for me. I've used it, at the end just as a check to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And then if I end up like writing papers, using it to help me edit and make sure that I'm adequately describing what we've gone through. So from beginning to end, being able to use Gen AI, I think it's really critical that we teach students how to effectively and ethically use these tools, because it will be such an accelerator to their career and such a huge differentiator. I'm able to make so much more difference so much more quickly through the use of these tools, and they should learn that as well.
Thank you. I think those are some really good perspectives. When we look at this, it's probably not surprising that some faculty have done research on, does it really help learning? And so one of the studies I looked at, I forgot to write down the citation for this. They did a study of students in control group that were not using AI and students who were using AI. And it turns out the students using AI wrote better papers. But later, when you did it again, and the second time they were not allowed to use AI, they did worse, not the same as the other group. And part of it is because they weren't building the neural networks in their brains, literally connecting neurons as you learn. And so I think the challenge there is not to say it's good or bad, but to say we need to focus on the internal learning models in their brain to help them build that specific set. Because everybody that I've talked to at the program, especially about the panel and outside in the hallways, has said, people in the loop are still critical, and they are. We just have to focus a little differently on what it is we learn and how we leverage learning. I remember the old days when they would complain calculators were being used. You're going to forget math. No, it turns out you can do more complicated math.
Yeah.
More accurately. How do we help the students build the neurons in that? And so there's still going to be people in the loop for a long time. We still, whether it's community colleges, the teaching colleges, the research universities, or industry and lifelong learning, we're still going to have these challenges. So now we're going to switch gears. We'll say from a faculty or a teaching perspective, whether we're at a community college or teaching, again, research, whether in industry, what are the challenges or the opportunities? And we leave it open to everybody's passion and perspectives. What is it that we think, well, Vishal wants to rotate. So we'll switch over to Carlos this time to democratize the process. And we'll just say, from your perspective, what are the kinds of things from the teaching/research piece that you may want to share with the group?
Thank you, Laird. And let me start by breaking this into two different angles. One is my teaching is I'm only teaching at this time at graduate level, for one thing. I teach undergraduates every couple of years or something like that. But I'm teaching graduate students, and I have two different sets of population. One is the MBAs, and the other one is information systems / supply chain analytics. Our program is not management oriented; it's more analytics and technology oriented. And to those, the teaching is more experiential into both of them, but to the ones that are more research oriented is more into how to write a paper. So I am not that into, my class is going to have 10 lectures, but rather we're going to pick a topic and we're going to explode that topic in many different ways. And many of the data sets that I bring, as I mentioned before, come from industry. So what I do is I tell them, this is the kind of data sets that you're going to find once you leave. Why don't you ask an AI to help you understand what that data says? And then the first part is, can you understand how feature engineering could be done with the help of an AI? And it's interesting. You can actually ask an AI to analyze data. Of course, it's not perfect. We're just starting to scratch the surface of that. But we're going to be there in several years. And the fact that the students are now able to understand what's underneath the data, how to find the correlations between the variables. And listen, I'm talking about data sets of over 1 million or 2 million registries that otherwise we would not have been able to understand all perfectly before we start dealing with it. Okay, so that's a thing that is helping us to kind of tailor the learning process of how to clean data sets, how to find outliers, how to get rid of them, or how to fix them, the data set, how to protect the data set. Because the last part of it is, yes, we built a model, but then again, what if the data is poisoned? What if the model is tampered with? What if you get this kind of attacks? Then let's try to see how a change in variability in the data set will affect the model that you're building. So this is the kind of things that we're doing. And the fact that we now have AI helping us, as you mentioned, good teaching plans, actually, it's building teaching plans that are very good. And by the way, if you tell the AI, help me build an AI from the perspective of the student so that they can understand better my speech, it's actually going to help you build something more tailored to the different kinds of learning processes that go through the minds of students. In the second set of population, it's MBA students. So typically it's more, case studies and more, I don't delve deeper into the technicalities that we go into the information systems students. But yet again, you need to still convey the message that you are going to go out, write reports. You are going to go out to analyze a trend in a forecast. You're going to go out to analyze relationships in your data sets that will help you understand better how you make decisions. And by the way, they're MBAs, so they are being trained to make decisions. So that's also a different path, but nonetheless, it's also a path that we are encouraging our students to understand that they have to see this as the new normal. And it's not going to go back, it's just going to go forward. It's going to go more potent, more powerful. And we need to tell our students to not be afraid of it. This morning, I heard a conversation saying that 90% of the AI things are going to be good. And then why be afraid of just the other 10%? Just try to find the ways of understanding what could be wrong and then try to put the barriers or the paths to go ahead. Thank you.
Hello. So, based on my experience, as far as teaching is concerned, I would say that we all know about the hallucination effect in generative AI. So you set a problem in such a way that a new product is being launched, and they have to plan the supply chain. And the suppliers from such a country where they haven't supplied in manufacturing that product in the past. So if you run that problem in generative AI, I'm sure that will give you a wrong result. So what I tell my students is, please be aware of the hallucination effect in generative AI. So before you submit your result, please go through it. Because if you submit that result, we'll immediately know that you haven't gone through the result and just blindly followed what is being generated by that generative AI. So based on my experience, I have seen a combination of AI or machine learning and generative AI can produce a better result. If you think of a hierarchy, the base is machine learning, which does better forecasting, which does better, if you say, uh, uh, relationship between different variables as far as correlation. It can be any model, but the interactive part can be generative AI, gathering data, gathering information, and getting that into the machine learning part and running the model. So if a student can run how effectively put those two together, generative AI and machine learning, probably they can get a better result. And in the supply chain, there are some companies, they are working in that area, how they can put together these two models and get a better result. And especially like for project, like those faculties who are working on funded research project, that's probably the right path to take. And we have students here. If you have any question on that, probably I'd like to have a more interactive session and your insights on that.
As a faculty member at a community college, our mission is teaching and learning. We don't, we're not chartered with doing research. And so how I use AI for me in my classes is I feel that I'm able to keep my classes up to date. To my colleagues who teach at the university, I'm teaching, my load is 8 classes a term, not a year, but a term, right? So, and some of them are, you know, I have multiple sections, but it's a lot, right? And it's face-to-face and online. And so by using Gen AI, for example, I went in and I said, I'm going to up my game in my principles of marketing class. So let's see, you know, using Gen AI, I want to tell a story module by module. Give me some suggestions. And so it did. And so that was my foundation for my revision. And then I decided, because I like to, in my face-to-face classes, I do a lot of we play games, board games, all kinds of games. And so I said, I want to ultimately create a quest that these students are going to engage in for each module. So help me create a video. And using Gen AI, I not only was able to get the outline of what I wanted to do. It gave me the dialogue. It gave me what I needed to ask Firefly for the digital images. It gave me the voiceover script that it took me an hour to create this video that I think is pretty cool. And, you know, it was my first attempt. So we'll see how it goes. This is something that's new. Where I start class on Monday. And so these are just some of the things that I think about, you know, keeping my discussion board up to date. So I, again, create a story that one plays on the other. I don't, being that I came from industry, I try to give them as much experiential activity as possible. And so I spend a lot of time creating what I think is a really great story, and all of my classes talk about this particular company. So whether you're taking principles of marketing or intro to international, you get to talk about Mart Rivers, the furniture company. Well, I've been wanting to update that because, you know, by now I have repeat customers, right? Students who are maybe sometimes they end up taking principles of marketing again because they didn't pass, or they're, you know, taking other classes with me and they're like, okay, well, this is getting a little bit stale. Now I can very easily ask the generative AI, okay, what can I do to take it to the next level? And so again, it just keeps things fresh and keeps students engaged. And if I'm keeping them engaged, they keep coming back, right? And so we, you know, we look at our retention, I'm sure as we all do, but you know, being that it's a community college, there's more of a chance that they might not persist. And so this is one of the ways to do that, is to create these engaging activities. The other thing that I was thinking about while we were sitting here, and what is definitely something that's always front of mind for me, and I know we've heard some discussion about this, some of the biases of AI when you ask for a prompt. And so I was playing around one day and I said, give me a professor. Well, I was holding my breath that it would come back and, it would be a white haired, middle to late older man. But to my surprise and delight, it was an African-American man. And so when I'm creating these images to put in my D2L shell, or to put, because I have a lot of visuals, I make sure that my visuals reflect my student body. And so it would be, as I was sitting here, this panel is a great example, right? I could make sure that all of my students see themselves in whatever I'm putting out. And I think that's really important.
I think Gen AI, it's really important, the students that are here, that it is a tool in your tool set. It's not the whole toolbox. You have to have the underpinnings, the technical underpinnings, to be able to effectively use it. Like I said, I've been using it to generate some Python code. The data set that's based off of is several years old. So a lot of the libraries are updated. And so if I go to actually run it, it fails. I have to know how to troubleshoot that. And, with my experience, I can go in and figure out exactly where it's gone wrong or what's been updated. And I can go in and, precision like fix that. But if I didn't have any of that experience and that actual education underneath it, I think I would be really lost. So I think it's just really important that we see it as an augmentation of us and not a total replacement.
Subro, and I'll tease us because academics love to talk. We'll talk for hours. When I'm up here tapping and nobody's paying attention, that's because we're academics. We just keep going. So I know we got Vishal here, so I just want to say, not Vishal's not the problem, so I didn't say it. I just wanted to remind our group that I was going to remind Vishal, please.
So I think the original question was around like, what are opportunities for faculty in this space? And so I had a lot of time to think about this. So I'm gonna talk about two examples, I guess one on the teaching side. And I think the biggest opportunity on the teaching side for me is around personalization. So to give an example, to complement the ones we've already heard, one of the tools that I built for one of my classes on AI ethics is a tool called Chatocrates, which is a little bot that students go online and they engage with a question. So I will start the conversation for them and I will ask a question like, how should we think about regulating companies that want to make AI avatars of celebrities, right? And the students, I have undergraduate students that are perhaps not super reflective or engaged with the question, and they will give some terse answer, and Chatocrates will, in Socratic teaching method fashion, do the thing that I would have done in office hours, which is just ask a sequence of probing questions. And so Chatocrates responds to whatever they say, and I can build this tool. It wasn't hard to build, it wasn't hard to host. And what it really means is that now students that might not have come to my office hours because I'm scary, or because they're in a weird place at a weird time, or they're doing their homework at 4 a.m. on Saturday morning or something, can still engage somehow with a personalized conversation that mimics that experience, and will get probing questions that they have to respond to and think about, and it will evolve and respond to them, getting them hopefully to engage with the material in some deep way. So developing these sorts of tools is surprisingly easy now, and I think that's the real opportunity that I'm seeing as a faculty member with these tools. The second thing I'd talk about, ooh, I got the wrist. Oh.
Love if you got his ideas.
The second thing I'll talk about is probably on more on the research side, right? And so I do think a lot about the quiet part that we don't say out loud, right? Which is that a lot of companies right now are throwing a ton of cash at AI, and most of them will see no returns, right? Most of these will be failed enterprises. And there's at least two reasons for this. One is that they're not really thinking about how to integrate these processes into their larger business and how this will shape how people act and actually make decisions. And the second part of it is the harsh reality that the kind of AI tools that we have methodologically right now are really good at things like looking at an image and telling you whether it's a chihuahua or a muffin, but are not really good at doing the things that we do as supply chain professionals. They're not really great at real-time routing across the Atlantic or figuring out how I should do procurement. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with my students is help them understand the difference between these two kinds of tasks. And one of the things that we do in our lab is really thinking about how do we leverage the knowledge that we have as people, as supply chain professionals that we've built over the last 100 years about what does a good hub and spoke model look like? What does good flexibility look like? Where should you position buffer inventory? Use that knowledge to kind of pre-train and start up AI so that it can build and improve upon that, rather than this kind of modern approach in LLMs of just throw more data and more compute at the problem and pray, right? And so I really hope that our students see this. And I think the opportunity for us as researchers is really to push that envelope, to be like, we can do something smarter than like throw more compute and throw more data at it and pray. There, and that'll be it. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I think it was great. One of the things I want to remind us is that humans in the loop and validation are important. I'm an expert witness on an international lawsuit with supply chain. And when you're looking at the validation, it turns out there was a lawyer went into a courtroom, true story. I went into a courtroom and he had Chat GPT write a brief for the judge because he was making a motion. And so the judge looked at him. She had already read the motion before the case came before her. And she said, so did you use AI to do this? And he said, yes. She said, you know, I have law clerks, right? And he said, yes, Your Honor. And she said, you know, my law clerks looked up every citation in your brief and none of them exist. And he got sanctioned. It wasn't just, she actually sent it to the bar for sanctioning. And so when we talk about the humans in the loop, again, my department has management science and analytics and supply chain. And one of our junior professors, very good at this, decided to help the rest of the college to learn how to use Chat GPT to write exam questions, right? So if you need 100 exam questions, you don't want to do those manually. And oh, by the way, if you have multiple classes, right, it's just big. And so he showed how to do that. And as he did it, I was sitting there, and so he picked supply chain. So he says, give me 5 supply chain questions for an exam. And so it did that, ta-da, in a few seconds, here it is. And all the incorrect answers were certainly plausible. And everybody's thinking, this is fantastic. And I said, you know, the correct answer is absolutely wrong, right? And so you have to validate the human in the loop. We have to understand where it helps to support, but it doesn't directly analyze. So with that, we've got another 12 minutes left. What I'd like to do is maybe have each person take 2 or 3 minutes, whatever they're passionate about, AI and higher education and continued lifelong learning. And by the way, we'll try to save a couple of minutes for the students to ask some questions. All right, you want to go over? Subra, you want to go first?
I'd like to tell my students and also students here that if you are not from computer science background or math background, don't use AI blindly or machine learning blindly, because in the background of that machine learning is some statistical model. You have done regression before, you have done decision tree before, or maybe neural network before. So those are the models which run a AI ML tool. So try to understand the basic logic, then you'll not make mistakes in your applications. So there is no silver bullet for every problem. So if you know the basic background, basic mathematical modeling, again, it's not difficult. You can go online, search about that, brief yourself a little bit about what goes into the background of those tools. I think then your applications would be better and the chances of making mistakes would be less.
I think as you were saying that, Subra, I was thinking trust but verify, right? So was I the only one that, and so yes, getting the students to use it, but also teaching them how to make sure that what they're getting is in fact what it should be. And so, you know, checking the citations that, and I do check them, you know, and I was like, how did you get from here to there? And then, so telling students that you have to make sure that you're just not plopping it into the prompt and then copying and pasting it. So do your homework.
Really embrace the lifelong learning that we've been discussing. I had never written any Python code until like 7 years ago. I've gotten machine learning certifications and data science and learning more every week, every day. And I set aside time for development to read articles or to try sample problems, and really getting your hands around some of these difficult problems with some kind of data set is really the best way to continue that learning. And then when you do use Gen AI for different stuff, you have some basis to do that check that we've been discussing.
I guess I touched on it before, but the thing I'm most excited about is definitely this idea of using AI to build upon domain expertise that we already have instead of replace domain expertise, and sort of thinking about what are the next generation of models going to look like that combine best of both worlds.
Maybe to corroborate, I mean, all of the suggestions are great. And just one, don't be afraid. That's one thing that we need to understand, that this is here to stay and most likely to improve upon what we're seeing now. Two, totally agree with you. What we're going to start seeing now is personalized models for each domain. So in optimization, we're starting to see some of these things. We now can build mathematical models for deployment in industry, not in 12 months like before. We can do it in 3 months. And that's what these tools are going to be about. It's going to help us a lot. Third, totally verify everything that you say. If you see a text that the evidence is overwhelming, well, you have to prove it. Where is the evidence? I mean, you gave it a table with some numbers. Is that the overwhelming evidence? Try to understand that the hallucination effect is really there. And these are language models. So they are made, they're perfected for, and they're still not perfect. They're perfected for that purpose. They're trying to build to predict the next word in a sentence that they are building together. So just make sure that that hallucination effect is taken care of, and use it wisely, use it correctly, use it responsibly. Like, you can tell, hey, this is my essay. You can prompt your essay, and you can tell, what are good questions that I can receive about my essay, for instance. And then it's going to give you 10, 12, 20 questions that might come based on what you wrote. And that's how you start, okay, now I need to answer those questions. That's an iterative process. In that way, you're still learning. And that's a good way of using these tools. Thank you.
By the way, I do want to thank these guys for making me look good, because I don't, know a whole lot about what I'm talking about, even though I work in this arena. But what I did is steal some ideas from each of them. I'm going to summarize a few of these, and we're going to ask the students, we're going to put them on the spot. You guys need to ask some questions, or I'm going to come down there and get you to ask questions. So first of all, when we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, there are literally dozens and dozens and dozens of models. ChatGPT happens to be a dominant one for a natural language model, but there are all kinds of different models there. I looked up recently, Python, depending on where you look, has anywhere from 100 to 300,000 libraries and modules. When we're working with those, we really need, and a lot of senior folks I've talked to even today, again, reiterate, we still have humans in the loop. You still have to present these ideas to senior leaders. So in our program, our graduate program, and actually in a week, we're starting an undergraduate degree in analytics. One of the core areas is visualization, and it has twofold. One is we have the graduate students, for example, do visualization in R, they do it in Python, and they do it in Tableau. So they can see what the tool sets do. But more importantly, the requirement is your customer is a senior leader, and whatever she is looking for, you have to translate into her language, not your language, not the coding, not the geek speak. What do senior leaders worry about? What keeps them up at night? How do we build dashboards to support them? And so we're forcing our students to take a customer perspective. And I also teach visualization in the MBA program. And of course, MBA students are very different. In our analytics program, the first class is Python. Welcome to analytics, right? And if you can pass Python, welcome. If you can't, go do the MBA. But you've got folks from criminology and history and nursing and MBA programs. You can't go full speed on that. And so here we teach them a different tool set. How do you build dashboards again for senior leaders? And how do we figure out what they want? And so our capstone projects are focused very much. You can't pass any of the programs without working with companies to present to senior leaders. I stole a few more ideas. We have certifications, right? So a lot of positions now are saying we want certifications. So I can get a certification from IBM. I can get it from, Google's perspective. I can get the Amazon position on what are we doing in this certification for AWS. I can do a whole bunch of different certifications. If you need those, that's fantastic. But again, there are still senior leaders we're supporting. We still have to put it in their language because they don't really care about Python. They care that we're helping them, like the Wizard of Oz, telling them these are the levers you have, and here's what happens when you do these levers. And the senior leaders, he or she will make those decisions. That's their job. Our job is to give them better information faster and more accurate, which again comes back to verification and validation. We can talk a long time about that. I do have some advice for the students. I've done this the past several years. Whenever you have a free elective, take some kind of additional analytics classes. You will eventually, over time, be growing in your careers and becoming senior leaders, but at least understand the fundamentals. Because as I was talking to one of the senior leaders, even before this talk, it's key. She's looking to hire a bunch of analytics graduates, but they don't speak the transitional language to put it in senior leader language. So for you guys, take the analytics classes and particularly pay attention to how do you apply this if you're a senior leader? What is it you need to see? Talk to folks in industry. There's going to be a networking reception tonight. Ask them questions, get to know them. And by the way, do not walk around like a bunch of ducklings together with all the students together. Break out and go talk to some folks. Don't be afraid to go ask questions. Say, hey, what does your company do? And are you looking for students? What are the kinds of things you might recommend I do, or I try, or I study? Some years ago, I did a talk. I was invited to do a talk for military comptrollers. Who knew they existed, right? And the whole talk was on the evolution of AI and where we're going with this. And so the talk started with a whole bunch of different areas and then subtopics of what's AI and machine learning and what are they good for and things like that. And then it ended up with, if you want to continue learning, and this includes for senior executives, don't be afraid to try this. We're all figuring this out. Everybody's figuring out what AI and machine learning is doing to be applied. Find out the skill sets for your particular perspective. If that means just going and getting some classes from Coursera or Udemy, if that means taking a certification, if that means going to workshops. A few years ago, some colleagues and I in Huntsville, Alabama, had kind of an offline citywide opportunity for folks to come in and learn Tableau more on how do you do dashboards and talk to senior leaders, that type of thing. And so for the students, pay attention to those things. By the way, there are a lot of individual models. I'm also a graduate of Michigan, and they're actually doing tutorial mentor bots that are individualized to the students and their particular program. And so if Wink and I are in the program, we're going to have different bots. We're going to get different responses. My job is to keep it quiet. His job is to tell everybody about kidney stones, right? So, all these different bots. And I love his corny, crazy jokes. Some of them are even funny, but no, he's actually a treasure, so I have to tease him. He knows I like him a lot. Take the electives and keep learning. Now, we have a couple minutes left. Students, do you have any questions? We have some remarkable people here, and anybody, sir, stand up. Do we have a microphone by chance or not yet? If not, talk loudly.
I need a microphone. So I think it's common knowledge that AI isn't going anywhere. Things here to stay. Do you think that AI and the next, when they look back in 20, 30 years with education, this is going to be helpful, or do you think it'll be hurtful?
The academics would say yes. That's a Boolean question, by the way. If the math of computers is Boolean algebra, the answer is yes, because you gave us an OR question. So having done my bad Wink quality joke about your question, you guys want to talk about that?
So it's of course going to stay, and maybe new areas of applications of AI will come up. When I was initially got introduced with Gen AI, I heard a new program which might be coming in the near future, that is prompt engineering. So students would be taught what are the different prompts you can use to make the best use of the generative AI. But again, what I understand, this generative AI is in a very nascent state now. It's going to grow because it needs tons and tons of more data to give better result. But as it grows, that prompt engineering will grow as well. And it will become more complex than what it is now. It is just not asking few questions, but it will get much more complex. So by the time you graduate, maybe in a year or 2 years' time, probably you should update yourself how to develop skills on that prompt engineering, so that when if a company comes and interview you, like, well, do you know that? At least you can answer, well, these are the techniques, like SEO, search engine optimization. There are some rules for that. Similarly, for that prompt engineering, there are some rules which would be developed, and it is getting matured as days goes. Hope I can answer that question.
Maybe I can add something to this. So if the question is like in 20 years, are we going to look back and decide that AI was terrible for education? I think like the kinds of studies that Laird's mentioning recently about the idea that, you give first year calc students access to an AI, half of them had access to an AI, and then you give them an exam and you see what happens. And you find that the students that when you take the AI away don't do as well as their control group. I think this really points to the idea that to answer this question, we have to think about what is AI's adoption going to look like outside of school. So if the reality is that I'm never going to be solving some, difficult calculus problem without the assistance of an AI, or I'm never going to be writing a script for Python without the assistance of an AI, then is it really relevant that I don't do as well as a counterpart who doesn't have access to it? Right. So then I think the question then becomes, well, yeah, it really, to answer what effect this will have long term, we really need to think about what will global adoption look like in a lot of these industries. And if we expect that having something like Copilot to help you write code, or having something like ChatGPT natively embedded to help you idea generate, or having something like Wolfram Alpha to help you do symbolic algebra is going to be super accessible the same way the calculator on my phone is, then I see this only as a positive net benefit, right? I think that these sort of current studies about, well, they don't learn as well as their peers are sort of misdirected and are sort of thinking about the wrong question.
Yeah, I agree with that. The question was, as it was set up, they didn't do as well later. Reset it up, redesign the learning process. That's the point I was trying to make. So thank you, Michelle, for pushing on that. Redesign the learning process so that you understand better what it is you're trying to do. So as universities, we have two products: the programs we offer and the students that we graduate, right? And those students go out in the world, they go into industry, and they continue to do their education. I do want to add one more piece I forgot to mention. So part of the reason I don't go on to ChatGPT and train that model on my exam questions is because I know my students are going to see this and all of a sudden they're going to have these answers remarkably consistent with whatever I put out there. And so the security issue is there. A lot of companies actually set up a sandbox. So when we're doing AI and I'm doing research or whatever I happen to be doing, or I've got sensitive products, or I don't want companies to know what I'm doing, you can actually set up kind of a sandbox, an isolated setup for AI. So you can do some internal testing without the rest of the world benefiting from that. Do we have any more questions from the students?
Here, there's one up front there.
Please stand up. Yeah, the microphone may or may not work. We'll see. Normally they just turn it on, so. Just say AI, turn the switch on. Siri.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts as a MD going to pursuing the master's here at USC. It's very interesting to hear what professors and expertise are thinking about the AI. So my question is more related to creativity aspects. So to what extent do you think AIs are fostering or limiting the higher education's creativity, or impacting in students' creativity? Because for me, I think creativity is some a necessary part when you're dealing with problem solving skills. Not everything is number in our life, and sometimes I feel emotional intelligence or something like that might be applied. So I just want to hear what you think about that aspect.
That is a surprisingly interesting and complex question. So we'll see if anybody is crazy.
Maybe I'll just.
Super wants to take this on. He's a professor. He's like, I got this.
So again, creativity is something which keeps on evolving and changing. So right now we look for some sort of a creativity in our students. Maybe in the future we'll have a different set of creativity with the help of this generative AI and AI. Okay, so things are evolving, and that creativity will also evolve. Would like to.
Yeah, just to tag on what Subaru said, there's so many different tools right now, as I was mentioning earlier, that you you can go in and customize anything you want. Like really, the sky's the limit. You ask for, you know, something that's really out of this world and you will get something back. It might not be exactly what you were thinking of, but it can spur something else. And you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Let me go down this road. So I fancy myself a creative person, and I am just shocked at some of the things that when I'm using AI, what comes back. And then it starts me thinking about, oh, and I could do this and I can do this. So I think to your point, AI is going to help with creativity. Absolutely.
Just to offer a contrary opinion, this is one of the things that I like actively worry about. Is that like we have a room full of, I don't know, 150 people. If I ask an open-ended question, in general, I'd expect 150 diverse answers. And what we're seeing a lot with technology like the Gen AI tools is that there's a lot of groupthink and there's a lot of convergence on like a small subset of answers. We've already like people have tried to measure this. So we tried to measure this with technologies like predictive text, right? So I guess like, I don't know, Google has like the smart respond on Google on Gmail that just like, I'm interested, or yeah, I'll be there. And people default to using these tools because the predictive text gives you an easy answer. But then again, the diversity of responses you see goes away. And I think in real world situations, diversity of responses and diversity of ideas around the table matter in an order one way. And I worry about this in my classroom. And so I think there is active research on kind of thinking about this and how these Gen AI tools serve as a crutch and maybe reducing the kind of diversity of creative responses we have, while at the same time, as people have mentioned, lowering the entry bar to having a creative response. But then we're trading, I don't know, the entry level difficulty for the overall diversity.
And we run into this Chat GPT, which is very popular now. It's one tool. And so I've done my own experiments with the same thing. I write a question and it gives me an answer. Then I modify the question to mathematically make it literally a 90-degree and orthogonal unrelated answer. And I get 95% of the original answer
Yeah.
with a little bit of tuning. You're saying, well, that's not really innovation. That's not creativity. There are many, many other tool sets in here. I'll give you an example. Genetic algorithms. By the grace of God, I've got the chance to be mentored by John Holland, who's the inventor of genetic algorithms, first PhD in the world, by the way, in computer science. And there are tool sets in there where you can actually literally mathematically cause it to change its structure, and you can control how it does it. And by doing that, you can get answers that surprisingly humans hadn't thought of. You can actually have it design engineered products and come up with solutions that humans never anticipated, just completely out of the box. But you have to know enough about the different tool sets to know what tool sets to test, and be like us, experiment, make some mistakes, try some things, go, I like that answer, I don't like that one, that's too similar, that's not what I'm looking for, I need to go over here and try something new. So that was an excellent question. You get brownie points for that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
before-
I'm gonna add something on that. So
Please.
just to kind of understand both positions. So there's several things that we can say. One is the process of helping students succeed into learning whatever we're teaching. I think that the balancing of the class is being seen. So I'm seeing that students that came with little preparation to the class are able to achieve the same goals as those that came already prepared for the class. That I'm seeing. However, and to your point, when you ask students to start giving you different solutions, that's when the problem starts. What we're not seeing yet is the many different diverse types of solutions. And it's basically because we're getting comfortable results. Somehow students are comfortable with what they are receiving, and we as instructors need to kind of raise the bar a little bit into that sense. Okay, let's just switch the concept. Let's just think about something else.
So I apologize. So we started a little bit late. Wink's giving me the hook over here. He's like, come on, you got to move it on. So we got to move it on. I would like to, first of all, thank this really smart and good looking panel for making me look good, because they did a tremendous job. So please thank them. And once again, the incomparable Wick.
All right, thank you. Laird, you need to fire your joke writer.